Look, it's not like I thought Pitt was bad this year, but I certainly didn't expect them to compete against Arizona State, let alone defeat them in a dual meet. That's right, Arizona State lost twice this weekend, once to Pitt and once to Princeton, in a crazy, surprising turn of events. Now, Pitt was down 16-6 heading into 174 pounds. It wasn't looking good for them. Yeah, Cole Matthews had a pin, but Jake Wenzel had just lost. Well, James Leto came into that match 174 and got a pin for Pitt. At 184, Greg Harvey stalled out Arizona State's wrestler, which led into 197 pounds. No Cordell Norfleet for the Sun Devils, but Nino Bonacorsi was going to have to do something big, and that he did. He came out with a pin, which clinched the dual meet for the Pitt Panthers. With Colton Schultz at heavyweight, they knew they were going to have to do something big here, and Bonacorsi did. They then traveled to Princeton, which unfortunately for the Sun Devils, they did lose that dual meet to Princeton. They lost at 22-18, and it was another, just close duel. It was split 5-5, and one of the best matches was between Brandon Courtney and Pat Glory. This was so exciting because it was such an elite matchup. Glory ended up getting a couple of takedowns and multiple near fall points, which secured him the victory. Up to this point, we only saw him wrestle a couple times this season at Cliff Keen, Las Vegas, but this was huge and really puts him at the forefront as a true NCAA title contender at 125 pounds. That was just Arizona State. What else did you miss? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name's Josiah, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling, your source for college wrestling news and discussion. And boy, was there a lot of college wrestling this weekend. I can't wait to get into the Big Ten upsets and mayhem. But first, I want to talk to you about a match that wasn't Division 1. I know I usually talk about D1 matches, but this was just too big to pass up. The Portillo brothers wrestled in a match over the weekend, and this wasn't just some funny joke match. They've actually done a couple of those in the past. This was throwing everything at the kitchen sink, and an elite matchup between these guys who have multiple All-American accolades between the two of them. This was Josh and Justin. Josh, a D2 wrestler at Nebraska Kearney, which is a top 5 school in D2, and his brother Justin as an NAI wrestler at Grandview. And there was a lot on the line. I didn't even realize it until I checked out Jason Bryant's college rap sheet. I'll have that linked up down in the description below. But Grandview is riding in a 111 match winning streak up to this point. And the dual meet actually came down to the brothers, to the marquee matchup between Josh and Justin. This actually came down to the wire for these two, and not only that, it actually went into sudden victory. It was 10-10 going into sudden victory whenever Josh was able to secure the takedown. 12-10, he won the match, but Justin's team, Grandview, ended up winning the dual meet and upholding their winning streak. It was the best of both worlds for both teams. This reminded me of the fourth Harry Potter movie when Ireland won the game, but Crumb caught the snitch. That's for anybody who's a Harry Potter fan out there. What a match. I really appreciate these two brothers putting it all out on the line, and it was just, I applaud what they did for wrestling. Let's get into some Big Ten mayhem. And yes, I will address some of the DeSanto rumors that are out there and tell you what's going on. So, Michigan, absolutely, they just kind of clobbered Ohio State on Friday night. They beat them 29-8, and thank you to anybody who tuned into the stream that we did. It was basically a play-by-play kind of radio broadcast that we did here on Fanco Wrestling. Me and Johnny J. Rock Johnson commentated the match. Appreciate the thousands of people that tuned in. And let me know if you want us to do that again. We're thinking about doing it for the Iowa and Penn State dual meet in a couple weeks. I think that'll be a blast. And Ohio State earned just 2 wins on the night. I thought they would earn a couple more, particularly one more, but Ohio State just earned 2 over Sammy Sasso and Carson Karchela, both won. There was no Cam Amin at 164 or 165, but at 174, that was a great matchup between Ethan Smith and Logan Massa, who absolutely battled throughout that match until the end when Massa was just able to kind of get away at the end. And I'll tell you what, Michigan looked scary good. They had to wrestle Penn State this week, and actually Penn State heads to them and in Ann Arbor, but that's going to be a matchup. I will be doing a full breakdown of that on the channel. Don't you worry. Minnesota, what an interesting weekend for Minnesota. Number 14, Minnesota beat number 10 Nebraska. It was just a great dual meet, right? To start at 165, which saw Gable at the halfway point beating Christian Lance by major decision, moving all the way around, came down to 157 pounds with Brayton Lee and Peyton Robb. A really good match. And interesting because Peyton Robb had already beaten Austin O'Connor earlier this season. So he wasn't afraid of top-ranked matchups. But Brayton Lee still came out on top. He ended up winning that match 4-0, which clinched it for Minnesota. But he unfortunately then lost in the Wisconsin dual meet. He lost to Garrett Model of Wisconsin, and what was a very interesting matchup between those two. It ended up being 10-5, but Model was just a takedown machine on Brayton Lee. The other upset from this dual meet was Eric Barnett over number 8 Pat McKee. You see that takedown machine Garrett Model right there of Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's just been exciting this season. I mean, number 9 beating number 14 Minnesota 21-15, a great Big Ten dual meet win for them, and this moves them to 7-0 on the season. Is Wisconsin undefeated, one of the last few remaining undefeated teams this season in college wrestling. They'll have Nebraska upcoming Friday night, which should be a good duel, who they just lost to Minnesota, and Wisconsin just beat Minnesota. So they're looking like favorites, but who knows what could happen. Then they have Purdue, and honestly, they could be 12-0 heading into their dual meet against Iowa, and I honestly think that they can finish the season 15-1, which would be great if their only loss in the season was to Iowa. Wow, Wisconsin is having quite the year. But Penn State and Rutgers, that was another great duel with a couple of pretty good matches. Penn State ended up winning 27-11. Unfortunately, we didn't get Nick Lee versus Sebastian Rivera. I was excited for that. These two guys are just point scorers, two of the most dominant guys in all of college wrestling. Now, Sebastian Rivera ended up winning the matchup that he did have, ended up winning by a bonus point victory, which he upholds those. Nick Lee was out due to some, I guess, off the mat things, or I think maybe even virus protocols. He was just feeling a little under the weather. There was something else going on. Don't read too much into it. I wasn't expecting, actually, I even heard that RBY may not be wrestling that dual meet, but he ended up wrestling, which did excite me to see him. But I'm still looking forward to the Nick Lee and Sebastian Rivera rematch when that does happen. Brady Berge was back during that match at 165 pounds. Of course, he just returned. He was coaching previously, and now he's back wrestling in college wrestling. 165 is where he wrestled. I honestly expect him to go down to 157. I think that'll be better for the team, but since he's just back, I could see him. That's why he's wrestling 165. We'll see if he keeps to make that descent or if he ends up staying there. And then Iowa defeated Illinois and Northwestern, and this actually brings us into our next topic. So Iowa wrestled Illinois and Northwestern, but they were absent a couple of guys. One of those was Jaden Ironman. The other was Austin DeSanto. Ironman was apparently just kind of taking a little rest, which guys do from time to time. You know, it's a long season, a long, grueling season. Now, DeSanto last wrestled a duel against Minnesota, which was on January 7th. And there's a lot of hubbub about DeSanto not wrestling right now. I'll explain to you why and what may be happening. So he missed the 3 recent duels. Not unheard of, not crazy, just out for a couple. And they bumped up Jesse Ibarra at 133 to wrestle in his place, while Jake Ayala was at 125. But what made people freak out was when Colin Shriver came out and pulled his red shirt against Northwestern on Friday night. He ended up losing the 2 matches that he wrestled this weekend against Illinois and Northwestern. Although he put up good battles, both decision losses. He's 15-5 on the season so far, and Shriver's a 3-time Iowa State champion. So why am I explaining this whole Shriver situation? Well, he's a multiple-time Iowa State champion and was probably needed another year of development to really get out into wrestling in college and be a truly phenomenal starter for the Iowa Hawkeyes. But now his red shirt's pulled and he's out. Why would Iowa pull his red shirt if DeSanto's still there, because he was probably going to start next year after DeSanto had graduated. Well, this is what Willie Saylor had to say on Twitter. He said, here's my take on Shriver's shirt being pulled. DeSanto is done. Nothing else makes one bit of sense. And I think he's reading, I mean, he could be reading too much into that. I don't know. That's not coming from anywhere. He even said that. That's not from any sources. That was just him tweeting out into the ether. And anything could be happening. I mean, Tom Brands even said, like, don't assume impending doom when the normal wrestler isn't starting. And that's what I'll say too. Like, that's kind of understandable when a couple guys don't start. It is weird. It's odd that they would pull his red shirt, but that could be due to any number of things. I mean, DeSanto could be out off the mat with virus protocols. He could be dealing with a nagging injury. He could have a longer lasting injury that's keeping him off the mat, and maybe he could apply for a medical red shirt if possible, or a medical hardship, depending on his match count and all that. There are many options out there. I wouldn't read too much into this just yet. I mean, I was going to need DeSanto to compete, but that's kind of the rumor mill of everything going on with DeSanto. What do you think? Do you think he's out for the season for some reason? I'm not saying anything until we actually get confirmed news about him being out. And there were some other great matches this weekend, including the Chippewa Challenge between Campbell, Central Michigan, American, and CSU Bakersfield. I love duels, and I mean, duels are my favorite in college wrestling, but I also love these duel events, the collegiate duels, the Virginia duels, the Chippewa Challenge, the Garden State Grapple. I mean, these are just fun events. And this was a battle between Central Michigan alums. They were competing for a trophy, actually, and it came down to Central Michigan and Campbell, who had both won multiple duels throughout the day leading into their big head-to-head matchup. Ended up coming down to heavyweight between All-American Matt Stencil and Campbell's Tay Gadi. Went to sudden victory. You know, your typical heavyweight match. It's tied going into sudden victory. Somebody needs a takedown. Well, it didn't get a takedown. What ended up happening was there was a stall call on Gadi, and Central Michigan won the dual meet. A fun dual meet overall, but I mean, come on, refs. With great power comes great responsibility. Don't end matches on stall calls. That's just my take. I never love seeing a match decided on a stall call. A couple other big things that happened. North Dakota State beat Wyoming, a top 20 Wyoming, 22-14, with Owen Pence pinning number 3 Stephen Buchanan. Columbia also had a close one with Lehigh, but Lehigh ended up winning 22-16. And what a week it was in college wrestling. Now that all the wrestling headlines are out of the way, what did you think that happened? Upcoming this week on Friday, oh my gosh, we have NC State versus Virginia Tech, which I will be in attendance for. Iowa versus Ohio State, Penn State versus Michigan. Oh my goodness, so much more. I can't wait to dive into it all with you. Thanks as always to the channel supporters, which are scrolling up the bottom of the screen. We are pushing. We're trying to get over that 300 mark for channel supporters. Greatly appreciate you, and talk to you soon.